Welcome to a new season in our lives. We are on a mission to demolish the arguments that have kept us from taking our next step towards true Christian authenticity. Are you ready to tear down those self-protective masks that are holding you back in life, in business, in relationships? It's about mindset, but more specifically, learning to keep our minds set on Christ regardless of circumstance. This is the Mindset School podcast. I'm your host, Peggy Easterling. Let's be real, okay? Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, friends. Today we're talking about something we all face at one point or another: unmet goals. You know, those big plans we set out with. Maybe it was reading the Bible in a year, hitting a fitness milestone, or reaching a new level in your business. And now here we are. We're staring at the calendar wondering, where on earth did the time go? If you've ever felt that sinking feeling of not hitting the mark, let me start by telling you this. You are not a failure, and your worth, it is not tied to a deadline. Here's what we're going to do today. We're going to reframe how we see unmet goals. We're going to talk about adjusting timelines instead of abandoning the vision, trusting God's perfect plan, and staying in the game even when life gets messy. So let's dive in together. Okay, you guys, let me be real with you. This year, I set a goal to complete an additional coaching certification by November 27th. I had it all mapped out. I had the milestones. I had the deadlines on my calendar. And as a person who wants to go after and accomplish things, let me tell you, I was excited about knocking this one out of the park. But life happened. Some unexpected things came up, things that, quite frankly, most people would use as an excuse to just throw in the towel. And there were days that I wanted to. There were days I felt overwhelmed and wondered, am I ever going to finish this? But here's what I've learned. When life throws curveballs, it's not about quitting. It's about adjusting. So instead of giving up on the goal, I took a step back and I asked, what can I realistically do right now to keep moving forward? I gave myself permission. You guys, I'm going to say that again. I gave myself permission to push the timeline out, aiming to finish by the end of December instead of November. And let me tell you, that shift in perspective, it's freeing because it's not really about when I finish. It's about why I started. My goal is not just to complete a certification to check off a box. It's to serve my clients more effectively, to bring them more value, and to glorify God through the work that I do. So here's my message to you. Adjusting the timeline doesn't mean abandoning the target. Life happens. Setbacks happen. But every day that we show up and do our best, we're inching closer to the vision God has placed in our hearts. Let's talk about what happens when we set goals and miss the mark. Psychologists tell us that our brains are wired to thrive on progress. When we make even a small step forward, our brains release something called dopamine. That is that feel-good chemical that motivates us to keep going. But what happens when we fall short? When that deadline passes and the goal is still sitting there unmet? Our brain's natural response is often shame. And shame is a nasty little liar, isn't it? It says things like, you're not good enough, or why even try? But here's the truth. Shame doesn't come from God. Romans 8:1 reminds us, therefore, there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. God doesn't condemn us for missing a milestone. He invites us to keep moving forward with grace. And here's what I want you to take away. Progress matters more than perfection. If you're making even the smallest effort to grow, you're on the right track. And when life happens and you need to adjust, that's not failure. That is wisdom. One of my favorite Bible stories is Peter walking on the water in Matthew 14. Let's set the scene. The disciples are in a boat. They see Jesus walking toward them on the water. At first, they're terrified. They think he's a ghost. But Jesus said, "Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid." Peter, bold as ever, says, "Lord, If it's you, tell me to come to you on the water. And Jesus says, come. So Peter steps out of the boat. Can you imagine the faith that it took to step onto those waves? Y'all, listen up. Something happens. Peter notices the wind and the waves, and that fear creeps in, and he starts to sink. Now, this is where most of us would think he failed. But here's the truth. Peter didn't fail because he sank. He succeeded because he stepped out of the boat in the first place. And what does Jesus do? He reaches out his hand and he catches Peter. He doesn't let him drown. He doesn't scold him for sinking. He says, "You have little faith. Why did you doubt?" Here's the lesson. When we take bold steps toward the vision God's given us, there'll be waves. There will be moments when fear creeps in, when the timeline doesn't go as planned, or when we feel like we're sinking. But guess what? Jesus is right there. He's reaching out his hand and he's saying, I got you. Let's keep going. You know, as a coach, they teach you to ask questions in order to help people to grow. I think that's what Jesus was doing. He's the ultimate coach, asking, why did you doubt? Because he wanted you to really dig into your faith and understand why you had little faith and why you were doubting. One of my favorite verses is Habakkuk 2:3. It says, "For the vision is yet for the appointed time. It hastens toward the goal, and it will not fail. Though it tarries, wait for it will certainly come. It will not delay." What I love about this verse is the reassurance it gives us about God's timing. We live in a world that is obsessed with speed, instant results, quick wins, but God operates on a different timeline. If he's given you a vision, you can trust that he will bring it to pass. It might not happen when or how you expected, but it doesn't mean it won't happen. The key is to keep a vision alive, even when a timeline needs to be adjusted. God's promises are never late. They're always right on time. So let's make this practical. Here are 3 steps you can take when life doesn't go as planned. Number 1, revisit the vision. Go back to the heart of your goal and ask yourself, why did I set this goal in the first place? For me, my coaching certification, it wasn't about a deadline. It's about serving my clients at the highest level. When I focus on why, it is so easy to keep going, even in the midst of life's crazy circumstances. Number 2, simplify the plan. When the big picture feels completely overwhelming, let's break it down into smaller steps. If your goal was to read the Bible in a year, start with 1 book. If it was a business milestone, focus on the next actionable step. Small wins create momentum. And don't forget about that dopamine when you get something done. Number 3, invite God in. This is the most important step. Surrender your timeline to him. Pray, Lord, what is the next best step that I can take today? When you invite him into the process, he multiplies your efforts in ways you can't even imagine. So revisit the vision, simplify the plan, and invite God in. Friend, let me leave you with this. You are not defined by last year's unmet goals. You are defined by God's love and the purpose that he has placed in your heart. Every step you take, even the imperfect ones, move you closer to who he's calling you to be. Do not let delays or detours discourage you. Adjust your timeline. Keep your eyes on Jesus and trust his plans are good for you. Until next time, remember this. You are made for this. God is not finished with you yet, and the best is yet to come. Thank you for joining me today on our journey towards Christian authenticity and a Christ-centered mindset. Remember, the masks that we wear not only hide our true selves, but also keep us held back, living small in life, in business, and in relationships. As we wrap up, I invite you to take a crucial step towards your breakthrough. I created the Breakthrough Quiz just for you. Head over to themindsetSchool.net/quiz and dive in to discover a guide to move you closer to your authentic self and renewing your mind God's way. Until next time, let's be real, okay?